I think the greatest moment from a personal aspect would be 2006 in Phoenix in the World Baseball Classic, and it's 5 days before the thing starts, and I'm telling Ernie Witt, "What are you doing starting Adam Lone, who'd never thrown a pitch at Double A? What are you doing throwing him against five guys? Jeter was there. I think Clemens didn't pitch, but they had five guys who probably going to go in the Hall of Fame." And Griffey was there, and because originally they were going to start Eric Bedard, and they flipped it. Anyways, Adam Stern has a great game, and a home run, an inside the park home run, triple, great catch, diving in center field, great catch against the wall when it was 8-6 off Chase Utley, and that was probably the proudest moment as a Canadian. Like. A couple of guys from USA Today asked me what it was like. I said, it's as big as Paul Henderson scoring. Now, the problem was, which the office told me, Cuba was playing Puerto Rico or the Dominican, and by the time the Sportsnet feed came on in Ontario, it was already 5-0 Canada, apparently, because they thought the game went into extras or something. I mean, the rest of the country got to see it, and it was great. And I was at the Olympic in 2004 in Athens, and that was pretty exciting. They had a lead going into the seventh inning, and then Kevin Nicholson came up and he hit one, and the third baseman hung his head, and it looked like it was gone, and the wind picked up, and the guy caught the ball right up against the fence. That would have been a game-tying home run, and then they would have played if they'd have beaten. Because the week before in Italy, I was there, and they beat the Cubans. So, and that's like Canada-Cuba is like Canada-Russia in hockey. I mean, they're elbowing everybody and cracking the catcher. In those days, you could do that. And a general dislike between the two countries. And I thought if they'd have won, they would have played Australia, and they would have had a wonderful chance for a gold medal, which would have been great for baseball in Canada.
So what I'm guessing is that it's hard to kind of boil down one favorite moment of yours, right? You've been around, you've pretty much seen it all.
Well, we could, if you give me a year or something. I remember. So the night they win the 93 World Series, we had assignments, so I'm supposed to do the MVP. So they hadn't announced it yet, but my guess was it was going to be Molitor. So Molitor scored ahead of Carter, and I just watched him. And he'd been in, so this is 11 years after he was in the 82 World Series, and he came here to be in the World Series. And so as soon as everybody went to Carter, they all went to Molitor. It wasn't like Cito. It wasn't like anybody else. They were just so happy for the guy, and he was crying, and you just could not be helped being moved by that. And I remember walking downstairs with a hockey guy, and I said, could you get that? They were down a run. Carter hit a 3-run walk-off. I said, could you get that at Maple Leaf Gardens? He said, yeah, that's just like an overtime goal. I said, no, they were down. You wouldn't, if you were down, you wouldn't go to overtime. So I think the other thing my father impressed upon me is that baseball is the fairest game of them all. Like football, you could double team the middle linebacker, or double team a guard, or basketball, you could double team the hot shot guy with all the 3 points. But it's just the hitter against the pitcher. There's nobody. Roger Clemens gets to Bob Gibson, whomever gets to their balance point. There's nobody pushing them off, and there's nobody holding the guy's bat when he swings. It's just hitter against pitcher.
And it's a game that you sometimes have to come to love. You have to come to appreciate. A lot of people, their first couple of times going to a ball game, they don't understand or don't truly know what's going on in the background of the baseball game, because there's a lot more than just face value, right?
Yeah, and the thing I think I enjoy about it, I know at the final night at the Olympic Stadium, I was talking to a guy, and the guy was crying, and he said, we couldn't afford to come in 81 when the Expos were in the playoffs, but my father went and borrowed the money to buy tickets. And I'll never forget those days. Like, I would sit with my father, and I'd say, Dad, why do they call it a fair pole? A foul pole if he hits it and it's fair. And Dad, why do they do this? He says, you can't go to a hockey game and talk like that. I mean, maybe you could go to a junior game or maybe a midget game, but now they play the music so loud. I've been to a couple of Raptors games. It was like a disco. You couldn't even talk. What'd you say? You could not even carry on a conversation. So, I mean, you can't do it in a movie. It's quality time. Like I've been to Cooperstown. We have meetings there in January every other year, and you can go walking through the halls and you'll see a guy standing there reading a plaque and crying, or reading, looking at an exhibit like one of these here and crying. And so finally, I asked the guy. I waited and waited and waited, and I said, what was so upsetting or moving about that? And he said, well, that guy there, he played in the game that my father, the first game that my father ever took me to in Philadelphia. And I just started reading, and then we got to the year that we went. My father took me to the game, and I started thinking about my father, and I started crying. I wasn't crying about it wasn't so emotional that I was reading, how many home runs this guy hit. I don't even know who the guy was. It could have been Mike Schmidt. I don't know who it was, but it was a Philadelphia player. Anyways, that's how baseball kind of transcends. I think more so than the other games.